Have the Dallas Cowboys finally figured out a solution at cornerback? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. I'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, it's a condensed week this week. We're going to do questions plus all 22 notes today. But how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. We don't want to waste a bunch of time. We will have plenty of time in the offseason after we win the Super Bowl to go over these games in more depth. But
Sure.
I'm excited to be here. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, let's get to our first question. A lot of people want to know about Israel Adebayo, who played in the slot a lot in this game. So the question from Carl: how do you think Israel Adebayo played against against Tampa Bay?
We're already on to San Francisco. I think McCollum had a very, very difficult assignment. He hadn't played a ton of corner this year. I think that they had rotated him in, kind of doing some slot work stuff at different packages, and they knew that this was always part of his repertoire. And I think part of the reason that they really liked him at safety was the ability to kind of reduce him down to play some more slot receiver. But it definitely was a difficult assignment. But I thought that he played beautifully. I mean, honestly, I thought it was a really great schematic adjustment to kind of help out the coverage inside. You knew that you're going to be facing a lot of Godwin, and you knew that we were all kind of on the outside trying to solve the third cornerback problem by figuring out who's going to play that outside receiver. We thought, okay, we'll move Bland inside like they have been recently. They'll rotate somebody else out, whether that's Xavier Rhodes, whether that's Wright, whether that's Joseph. And they'll try to figure out ways to work it that way. The Cowboys opened up the whole box and thought of it in a very creative way. They kept Bland on the outside, where he also plays very well. Moved Mukamu inside the nickel slot spot, which allowed him not only to kind of keep things comfortable in coverage against whoever he was facing. And maybe that's not something you would do against a more water bug slot receiver, right? But against someone like Chris Godwin, where he matched up very physically well. It was a huge benefit, not only in the pass game, in the coverage game, but also in the run game. And having that extra big body, Jaron Curse type player in the slot just gave you more size to handle the short passing game, to rally to tackle. And I think it ultimately was a really great game plan. I think they ended up using him there on just over 30 snaps. They did rotate in Rhodes to kind of mitigate it a little bit, but just using that as kind of their main mix-up, I thought was a really, really smart wrinkle that really kind of threw Tampa for a loop, it seemed like.
And I think it's here to stay, to be honest with you, because you look at the matchup this week, and we're not going to get too far ahead, but McCollum is not going to be the best in terms of shutting guys down, right? But where he can help you is by limiting Yak, right, and helping in the run game. And against San Fran, those guys can make plays after the catch. So if you can have one of these bigger, longer guys to help make tackles, it might be worth giving up some of these underneath routes in order just to avoid giving up bigger plays down the field. So I don't know. Do you think we're going to see a lot of McCollum in the slot next week as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it certainly is going to be part of the plan for sure. I think that they'll mix it up. I mean, look, I think, again, not to get too far ahead, but San Francisco is going to mix up what they do a ton. And that's why I think the Cowboys are actually a decent matchup because of that. They can put it in different alignments on the line of scrimmage. They can align these guys in the back in different ways to kind of match up with the personnel. The thing you have to worry about with San Francisco is their personnel. And so we'll see exactly how well they configure their defensive backfield to make sure that they tackle quickly and limit yak opportunities.
I will say, this is a good adjustment by Dan Quinn. Obviously, it messed with Tampa Bay a little bit. I don't love Deron Bland on the outside. I think he's a better slot than an outside corner. I thought he struggled at least a little bit in this game.
Yeah, I saw somebody tweet, I can't remember who it was, that they thought that he was the second best defender on the field, and
No
I
way.
disagree. I thought this was Bland's not worst game, but not one of his better games.
No.
And I think he definitely seemed more comfortable on the inside than on the outside.
Not to
Look,
say he had a bad game, because he didn't have a bad game, but he's just so much more comfortable inside playing the slot, where he has a size advantage usually over the slot receivers.
I agree. Yeah, and I think he plays that position well. That's why I think you're going to see a lot of variety. I mean, I think because to match San Francisco, and because I think that's the best way to kind of mitigate all of this. You don't overexpose Rhodes on the outside. You don't overexpose Bland on the outside. You don't overexpose McCollum on the inside. I think rotating it around and changing the looks up will provide the best opportunities for everybody.
Back to McCollum really quickly.
Yeah.
Why didn't we see this more at really any point in the season? Because from week 10 on, he never played more than 7 defensive snaps in a game.
I think that they really are committed to trying to make him a safety. I mean, they really are committed to, him kind of taking over that curse role eventually, I would assume. I think that we didn't see this earlier because, I mean, as much as we haven't wanted to admit this, the Cowboys have pretty decent depth at the cornerback position. And it took 2 of their starting corners to get injured to even get put into the situation where we thought, you had to rotate these guys in. And honestly, the reason that I think that McCollum wasn't the first choice here is because you still hadn't seen a lot of Joseph and a lot of Wright. So this was an opportunity for those guys who play that position naturally to get those chances. And then when it came down to, all right, well, let's figure out what works. You put a guy back at a position that he played in college, and lo and behold, he plays it pretty well. So I think it was just kind of all the trial and error figuring out what you have in your personnel.
Yeah, I mean, they were rotating a lot of different names at the end of the season at corner, right? Between Kelvin Joseph, Nahshon Wright, who was a healthy scratch. We saw Trayvon Mullen. We saw Mackenzie Alexander. Xavier Rhodes this week. So they might have just been throwing something against the wall, hoping it sticks, and maybe they found a unit that works.
You needed McCollum for a lot of special team stuff. You had kind of some not injured, but banged up safeties at different points. So you don't necessarily want to move McCollum around a lot while Curse is kind of dealing with an MCL. So maybe it wasn't something they were willing to try until this last week. And they're like, hey, this kind of works.
We're going to talk a little bit about the Cowboys offensive line, Landon, but really quickly before we do that, are we allowed to pat ourselves on the back of the show?
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
I thought when we were talking about Nahshon Wright and the inactives, it reminded me that Neville Gallimore was inactive against Tampa Bay, which we kind of thought would be the case. And I've got to wonder this week against San Francisco, I don't see how he's active this week either, right? Because how does he help you against the 49ers?
It's we're doing our best, guys, not to look too far ahead of this 49ers game. But I think, especially this week, the place to attack the San Francisco 49ers offense is right in the middle of their offensive line. And to me, no offense to Gallimore, but I'm not wasting any of these snaps on Gallimore, especially with the way the rest of these defensive tackles are playing right now.
Yeah. I mean, we should talk about that really quickly from the all-22 note. I mean, just Carlos Watkins had a really good game. This might have been the best game I've seen Osa Odighizuwa play in his life. Jonathan Hankins got back for the first time since his injury. He played 20 snaps. I thought he was fine.
Got a sack. I mean, got a sack, which is crazy. Yeah.
He was fine. And then Chauncey Golston continues to find ways to make plays. I just don't know how someone like Gallimore or Bohanna helps you with this team that you're playing this week or the team that you played last week.
I think Bohanna may have some opportunities to help you simply because he's another big body against a team that will probably want to run the football. And especially considering you have a short week, maybe he's a guy that you can get in to kind of help with some of your snaps. But the problem is that at the expense of who? Because that right now
Bohanna is he's just not athletic enough against a team that wants to run a lot of wide zone stuff.
That may be true. I still think that there is some value in having some defensive, run stoppers personnel outside of Hankins on the field. But I don't disagree in the fact that it's kind of hard to assemble a 53-man roster that he's on it just simply because the defensive line depth right now is as good as it's ever been. I love the group that they put out there at Tampa Bay. Every single player on that defensive line helped you in some way.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, and again, you have to remember that the defensive tackle position is being cobbled together by a combination of Hankins, Odigizua, Golson, and then Watkins, and then on top of that, all the other defensive ends that reduce down and rush from that stance. So, yeah, I think that they're going to want to use a bunch of different front looks. That's maybe why they end up bringing Bohanna in case they want to have like a 2-down lineman look, and then a bunch of linebackers or second level players. But yeah, it's going to be tough to make this 53-man roster because it's a good unit.
We'll say it's not super ideal that a 3rd round pick from each of the last 3 drafts, Jalen Tolbert, Nahshon Wright, Neville Gallimore, all inactive in a playoff game. It's a little.
You got a pretty good roster, though. Like that's the thing, is that it's easy to get upset about the end result, but the context there is that you've got one of the best rosters in football, and you've got a whole bunch of young players playing really good. There's just not a ton of room at the end right now.
Fair point. All right, let's talk about the offensive line, Landon. But before we do that, I want to tell you about Ultimate Football GM app. You've heard us talk about this mobile game app before, and I can't tell you how much fun I've had competing against some of our fellow Lockdown hosts. It's really, really fun. Now it's your turn to compete. More on this later. But if you've ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise, well, your dream has come true, as this game is definitely for you. You're going to manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through seasons, and lead your team to glory, trying to build a dynasty. With the Ultimate Football GM app, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your team by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all the ups and downs of the season. All of this in a realistic but challenging game world. The Ultimate Football GM app is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want to. And now you can compete against your favorite Locked On shows like me. You can play against me in the league.
Oh, no.
The Ultimate Football GM app will be hosting a special competition where you can win amazing monthly prizes. So stay tuned for details in an upcoming episode. Do want to let you know that Locked On Cowboys listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On at the game store. That is Locked On, all in caps. So make sure you check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the App Store. That is ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
Y'all take it easy on Marcus. All right. Don't beat up on him too much in that Ultimate GM game. All right.
Let's get to some more questions. Goran wants to know, how did Conor McGovern play overall, having to make that switch from fullback to left guard? You just don't see that very often, Landon.
It's not a common position switch, especially in game. I thought he played fine. I think it was a tough ask. I mean, look, he's been playing at left guard the whole season. So he knew what he was doing, but to kind of be dropped in like that against Vita Vea and Akeem Hicks, it was a physical, difficult matchup for both him and Beyondish. They got thrown around a lot, but they also battled and were able to do just enough. There were so many different snaps where they were hanging on for dear life and it was working. You got just that last little push of Vita, and it was enough to just delay him enough to let Dak get the ball off. It was a lot of that, and I felt like that's all you can ask for at this point. You're going to have superstars on all these teams, and you're not going to have superstars at every position. When you're kind of down roster players get an opportunity to go against another team's best player, getting some wins here and there is good enough, and that's fantastic. And I thought that for having to come into the game halfway and kind of not necessarily taking a full load of starter snaps during the practice week, I thought McGovern came in and played much better left guard than, frankly, he played at fullback, I have to say.
I thought between McGovern and Beyondish was clearly the weaker player of the two in this game.
I think he had the tougher assignment, to be honest. They were clearly just lining. What'd you say?
He's not healthy.
He's not healthy, but I will say I was surprised how well he was moving around. There was definitely a couple different snaps where he was actually the pulling lineman on the outside, and he was able to get out there without any kind of discomfort looking in his body. He didn't look like he was moving slowly. So he may not have quite the power that he had before the injury, or at least on Sunday, but at least it's not limiting his movements and too much. It doesn't seem.
Yeah, those guys are going to be in for a handful this week against San
Yep.
Francisco's front. We should mention Jason Peters, and I'm just bummed that Jason Peters got hurt in this game. It's probably going to miss. I don't know. It sounds like he would miss up until the Super Bowl if the Cowboys would happen to get there with a hip injury, because I thought he was playing really well at left tackle. And there's a chance that what the offensive line that they finished with is just a better combination going forward, because Tyler Smith plays better at left tackle than left guard. But it's tough not to have the flexibility now, the option to go back to Jason Peters at left tackle if you need to, if there's an injury, because again, I thought he was playing really well.
Yeah, look, we also cannot get out of this segment without talking about Tyler Smith too.
Yeah,
you mentioned it. Okay, good. But Peters, yeah, I thought before the injury was looking really spry, was moving well. They actually had him pulling and like going out and leading power runs and everything, and he looked spry for 40-year-old as a 40-something-year-old man. He looked very spry. So I thought that he looked really well. It really, really was a total bummer when he got injured, simply because of what you said. He was playing really well. And I thought that, honestly, and maybe this is your segue, I thought that Tyler Smith played fantastic at left guard when he was in there. And I thought that was kind of closer to what we have been expecting from Tyler Smith at left guard at different points. So that was incredibly positive. And then, obviously after Peters got injured, Tyler had to slide out to left tackle, and he looked excellent at that as well. So I'm just going to throw this out. Like, that was an incredibly impressive performance by Tyler Smith, to be able to go in there, practice the whole week at left guard, and then being forced mid-game to go back out and play left tackle again. And frankly, play left tackle better than Jason Peters was playing it. So Tyler Smith was the best.
The difference is, what do you like better, Jason Peters at left tackle or Conor McGovern at left guard?
No, yeah, that's why you have. Exactly.
That's why they started the way they did, right?
Yeah, exactly. It makes. I definitely am on board if everyone's healthy with Peters being the left tackle and Tyler Smith being guard. That wasn't a poor decision, but it was just incredible to see Tyler Smith play great at guard and then slide out and play even better at tackle. And honestly, I mean, I think this is a tall thing to say, considering who all was on the field. Tyler Smith was the best offensive lineman on that field on Sunday. And that includes Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, Tristan Wirfs, whoever you want to include. Tyler Smith was the best offensive lineman who played in that game.
I mean, it's not a particularly strong. I mean, like a bold take, because according to PFF, that's exactly the way they graded out. Tyler Smith was awesome in this game. I do want to mention Tyron Smith, because this was clearly the best game that he's played at right tackle. And you kind of expect that right now that he's a month into the season. He's got 5 games under his belt playing right tackle. Thought he looked really good. Again, I don't want to talk about San Fran yet, but if Nick Bosa is going to be lining up on that side, I feel pretty good having somebody with Tyron's power and length playing that right tackle spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely looked 100% more comfortable, specifically in the run game, making some of those hard backside cutoff steps with his left foot as opposed to his right foot, as he's used to, having a strong inside hand, just kind of getting used to that, and just really kind of continuing his work with Zach Martin and their combinations together. It just looks like he's more and more comfortable. And this is back to, pass protection at a level that was on par with where Terrence Steele was. The run game is still kind of, where there's improvement to be made. But I think like the jumps that Tyron is making week to week are noticeable.
One more note on the offensive line. We are getting to the scary spot at the tackle spot now with injuries, right? And depth. Like, if Tyler Smith is going to be starting at left tackle and Tyron Smith is starting at right tackle, do you realize now that you've lost your 3rd, 4th, and 5th offensive tackle due to injury? Terrence Steele, who was your starter at right tackle, Jason Peters, who was starting at left tackle, Matt Waletzko, who you drafted, who was on this roster to be a swing tackle. All of those guys are gone. Now it's Josh Ball and Avante Collins, who are one snap away from playing. It is a little scary, just gotta say.
Josh Ball played better football the last few times we've seen him
It's
play
true.
than as
But I
opposed
do
to
not want to see
what was
him
it?
at all
Yeah,
in the
no, I'm
playoffs.
not trying to put him out there. And then obviously Collins is the other guy that they have some snaps there that has some NFL experience. But yeah, this is definitely not a situation that you're wanting to get into at this point.
No,
So
but it
yeah,
happens.
hopefully you just make it through these next 3
There's only
games.
3 games left in the
Yeah,
season, right?
that's
Like
right.
this is what happens. So,
Yeah.
let's take one more break before we talk about the other receivers on this roster, not named CeeDee Lamb. But before we do that, we want to let you know about Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to basketball to baseball season, which is coming up in a little bit. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. It's always the fastest and the easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Landon, let's talk about the other receivers not named CeeDee Lamb because they had a pretty big game. I thought this was probably the best we've seen Michael Gallup look over the last couple of months. T.Y. Hilton getting more involved in the offense. How do you think those guys played?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before the game. It was going to be really important that those backside receivers, the alternate receivers outside of CeeDee Lamb, were going to need to have a big game, or at least be able to show up at the moments that you needed them to, and they did. I thought it was really great to see Michael Gallup playing closer and closer to 100%. He starts to see him gaining separation. He's elevating and hanging like he did before that whole Michael Jordan catch along the sideline was classic MG. I mean, just how he stays up in the air that long, I don't know. Honestly, to me, though, the most promising thing about all of that was seeing by the end of the game the timing and placement between Dak and Gallup on their slants, because that to me, it schematically is enormous. Because now, previous to this, like we've seen it, that they just really struggled to get on the same page. Dak will overthrow it. It'll come out late. Michael Gallup can't catch the ball when it gets to him. What you're seeing now is, and at least 2 or 3 of these in the game, they had 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 4. Gallup makes a quick slant inside. Dak puts it right on his belly, and it's an easy first down. And having that there when the defense is completely has their minds separated over here to look at CeeDee Lamb, having that ability for Gallup to break open and create separation and create that alternate opportunity to convert on 3rd downs. That's just now you're not having to solely rely on CeeDee Lamb to win one-on-one coverage. You're not having to rely on T.Y. Hilton to catch the deep ball. Now you have that reliable hands catcher, the body control catcher that Michael Gallup was previously, that can get you some of those 3rd downs when there's a lot of focus elsewhere. And that's going to be absolutely huge going down the stretch if that can continue.
I agree. I would also say having Dalton Schultz play the game that he did is really encouraging, because it wasn't just run 7 yards, turn around, catch the ball. It was throwing down the sideline with a guy literally on his back, and Dak drops the ball over his shoulder, right? It's on a breakdown in coverage where or Dak is getting outside the pocket and finding Dalton Schultz in the end zone. Like, if Dalton Schultz can be that type of weapon in this game and moving forward, Cowboys offense is going to be really hard to stop, because those are 2 guys in Schultz and CeeDee Lamb that both can win with route running, can both win with quickness, and they're both pretty reliable receivers. It's going to be tough to stop this Cowboys offense moving forward.
We're trying to have a conversation about all of the ancillary parts, because we know everyone is going to be talking about Dak. Everyone is going to be talking about Micah Parsons games. Those are those obviously incredible games, huge ports. I do want to point out really quickly the return of off-script Dak and how important that is to this offense as well. And that very much ties into what you're talking about. Schultz and Gallup are your off-script warriors. Those are the guys that Dak is looking for when he's breaking the pocket, because those are the guys who have great body control, are big targets. And the fact that both of those guys are operating at high level now greatly opens up that aspect of the game. And again, it just provides another opportunity for Dak to get out of the pocket and be dangerous.
We should also mention with Dak really quickly. this was the first game where there was no restrictions on him running the ball, right?
Yeah.
Like it was clear if he had an opening, he was going to take off. He made some big plays in the game with his legs, not only just a touchdown, but there was a third down that he scrambled and got. There was another time where it's like a 3rd and 6 and he got 5 yards and they were able to go for it on 4th down. That's going to be really key moving forward, because if San Fran or whoever you play in the rest of the way of the playoffs has to be worried and conscious about his legs, it's going to open up more throws down the field, more guys breaking open late. You can't just rush everybody and not keep a spy open. Just really nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, Dak has always been good about navigating the pocket and avoiding contact in the pocket, avoiding sacks. This is a different thing, bro. This is getting out of the pocket, whether it's to create chunk plays with your legs or to just change the passing windows to create passing opportunities down the field, which we saw with Schultz's, I think, 2nd touchdown, right? And with Gallup's touchdown along the end zone, right? It's just finding ways to kind of break free from the pocket, change the angles in which the defense is trying to coordinate between themselves and the receiver, and then delivering the ball to receivers who are presenting themselves, making themselves up. I love that little subtle move that Schultz made inside, not too far inside, because you don't want Dak throwing all the way back across his body, just enough that when Dak got to the sideline, all the defenders went to the sideline, anticipating that they were closing his passing window. Schultz steps right back away from the sideline, just a step to create a little bit of separation. Dak puts it right on there for a touchdown. That's the kind of stuff that the Cowboys need to continue to have when they get off script. Create big plays. Absolutely. Especially against a good defense like this, against the San Francisco 49ers, you got to create opportunities that the 49ers are not going to normally allow you to create. Break out of the pocket, break out of the pursuit, find new angles, find new windows, find new ways to win.
And the 49ers run a lot of zone. So sometimes you just need to hold the ball and get outside the pocket and let the zone break down before you make a play. Should be really, really encouraged with not only how Dak played in this game against zone coverage, but also you go back to the Eagles game on Christmas Eve, looked at the numbers before we came on, 24 of 24 for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against zone coverage in that game. That's what they're going to need to do to beat the number 1 ranked defense next week. We've got a busy rest of the week. Tomorrow, we've got the Locked On crossover with the guys with Locked On 49ers. I'm sure they're going to be real excited about this game. Looking forward to that. Landon, you and I jumping back on Friday to preview this game. But want to thank you guys for making Locked On Cowboys today your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you the local insights you love to the national spotlight with daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories. I wonder if Cowboys 49ers counts as biggest NFL story this week.
Maybe. Someone may be mentioning some of the 90s matchups. I don't know. That may come up. Who knows?
By the way, this is the 9th playoff meeting between the Cowboys and 49ers, most of any matchup in NFL playoff history. So pretty cool. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Go check out our show on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys over there. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. Enjoy your Wednesday. We'll see you guys next time.